right. And great talk by Lane. Not enough people talk about decentralization. I'm going to talk about decentralization quite a bit as well, so I really enjoyed the presentation. And I also want to start by thanking Erica and the rest of the organizing team. Just incredible event and just incredible community in Korea overall. I think on Axelar, something like 10% of our validators are in Korea, which is disproportional for the size of the country. So just very nice to meet a lot of you in person. So just to jump right into the presentation, today I want to talk about our vision for the space and where we see the ecosystem developing over the next few years. I think it's pretty self-explanatory from the slides. We're going to talk about many blockchains, and my personal conjecture is that there's going to be more than 1,000 blockchains that are going to be meaningful 5 to 10 years down the line. And in a world with so many blockchains, there's a lot of problems that arise, and this is exactly what we're trying to do with Axelar, right? So just to motivate the problem a little bit, I think it's becoming pretty clear that there's many blockchains, right? There's like hundreds of layer ones, layer twos, layer threes these days. These are all distinct blockchains, right? From the perspective of an execution layer, these are all independent. They have their own state, and they don't have a great way of communicating with each other, right? So for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to consider both layer ones and layer twos as their own distinct blockchains. And these blockchains have some fundamental limitations, right? When you want to process transactions within a single execution environment, you have to do so sequentially, right? Where if I send money to Erica, then the validators have to process this transaction, because if Erica wants to spend money, they will have to know that she already has the money, right? So we have to be able to scale these execution environments, and scaling linearly is very, very hard, right? Because there's fundamental limitations into how fast the EVM can process transactions in a sequence. And today we don't have strong enough hardware to make this process fast enough, right? So the only way to scale is by scaling horizontally. This is the new roadmap of Ethereum, which is rollup centric. There's going to be multiple rollups. It's with their own execution. But really the core idea is that if the space grows, there's going to be valuable applications that each are going to have a lot of transactions, and they're each going to need to have their own individual block space and execution, right? So it is under this premise that we're going to talk about the problem that Axelar is solving. And once we accept the premise that there's going to be thousands of blockchains, I'd like to start thinking about how can we quantify the importance of, cross-chain technology in such a system, right? And if we look at the ecosystem today and how people use applications, typically as a user in Web3, you're going to try to use, Uniswap. You do a couple of transactions, then you're going to move to Aave, get a loan, then maybe you go and buy an NFT. And empirically, we've seen that every fourth or so transaction is going to be on a new application. And in a world where applications are fragmented across different layer ones and layer twos, every fourth or so transaction is going to be cross-chain, right? So something like 25% of the transactions are going to be across different ecosystems, across different blockchains. And it's going to be really important for user experience to completely abstract away this middle step of jumping between chains and provide seamless user experience to people, right? And this is the problem that Axelar is trying to solve, right? How can we interoperate seamlessly across many, many chains? Now, with Axelar, we started building about 4 years ago. And at the time, many of you may remember that there were a lot of bridges in the space, right? The way people were trying to solve the problem, they would set up a centralized server, you would send them some money, they would min you some money on the other side. The main problem with this approach was that when you have a centralized entity holding a lot of crypto, it's very easy to attack. And this is what happened over the following years. The biggest projects from back in the day, like Ren Protocol, Multi-Chain, the Harmony Bridge, the Ronin Bridge, all got hacked because of this centralization attack vector, right? Someone managed to get access to the keys that were held by typically a founder and steal all the funds, right? So this is the first shortcoming of some of the existing solutions. The second big problem that Gen 1 interoperability solutions have was that they were not scalable. Typically, they would operate in a pairwise fashion, So if you want to connect one chain to 10 other chains, you have to set up 10 connections. And if you want to set up, a 12th chain, you would have to set up 11 new connections. And the number of connections and effort you need to expend is quadratic in the number of chains that you are working with, right? So this pairwise approach is really not scalable. And finally, the last problem with all those solutions was that they are bridges, right? And bridges are very well known for having bad user experience, right? Like you have to wait very long times, you have to go to a new interface, and generally you have to be aware that you are using multiple chains, right? Which is not the user experience we're used to in Web 2. For Web 3, we really need to offer seamless user experience and abstract away all the complexity or the backend, right? And you cannot solve this with bridging. You need something more. And here's where Axelar comes in, right? So when we started designing Axelar, we thought, okay, the only way today we can interoperate between chains is by having these centralized custodians in the middle. So what's a way to make this secure? And the answer was by creating a blockchain. So Axelar itself is a blockchain connecting blockchains. It's based on the Cosmos SDK. You can see some statistics on the left. We have 75 active validators on mainnet today, meaning that to attack the network and steal funds, if you want to do the same attack vectors that have stolen billions of dollars in recent memory, you would have to corrupt a weighted majority of the 75 validators, which is effectively as hard as attacking the blockchains themselves, right? Because all of the blockchains we connect, in reality, have about the same number of validators, right? And the other nice thing about this approach is that it's very easy to connect new chains. You add a new chain, you create a connection with Axelar. Through the Axelar hub, you can route messages to every other chain in the ecosystem, right? So this immediately solves the centralization issue, security, and the scalability, because now you only need to do one additional unit of work to integrate a new chain with the existing ecosystem. And on the final point about user experience, Axelar is not a bridge. It is a general message passing platform that people can use to deploy cross-chain applications. What this means at the very basic level is that we have built endpoints on all of the 60 chains we connect. And as a developer, if you have an application, on Avalanche and an application on Solana, you can implement cross-chain transactions where you interact with our endpoint on Solana, you pass a message to Avalanche, and your application on the Avalanche side can take another action, right? So through that, for example, you can implement a cross-chain loan, right? Or a cross-chain NFT purchase. And really the way people should be thinking about the next-gen interoperability protocols is very similar to how we think of layer ones today, right? So on Ethereum, for example, you can build primitives such as money markets, decentralized exchanges, NFT marketplaces. With Axelar, you can do all of the same things, but cross-chain, right? So you can build a cross-chain DEX that allows you to seamlessly swap assets between any two chains. You can build a cross-chain money market where I can collateralize an asset on Solana, get a loan on Avalanche. Or maybe you can buy an NFT on Polygon by using assets that you hold on Phantom, right? And all those things you can build on our platform today. So before we talk about some of the use cases, I'd like to double click on some of the technical benefits of the Axelar approach. First of all, full stack interoperability. We're a platform and you can build all kinds of applications on top of the platform. Second, the decentralized security, 75 validators today. Again, this is similar levels of decentralization to all of the big blockchains that we connect. So if you are able to attack Axelar's validator set, you should in theory be able to go and attack the other blockchains directly, right? So it's about the same level of security from a theoretical standpoint. By being an ecosystem, we also have very strong network effects. Applications launching on Axelar, which we'll see in a moment, can compose with other applications launching on Axelar, right? So for example, if you have a cross-chain DEX and a money market, you can imagine that you can do a swap and open a loan position in a single transaction, right? So all those things are available across all chains. And the final piece is about user experience, right? By leveraging the platform, you can completely abstract away the chain to a point where eventually users should not even have to think about blockchains. The way we think users interact with the technology is you have a wallet, you go to an application, you click a few buttons, you're like, I want to open a position with my funds, or I'm going to buy this NFT. The user should never have to think whether your assets live on Solana or on Avalanche or Polygon. All that has to be abstracted away, and this is all possible with the technology we're building. And furthermore, I also want to double click on the many-to-many connectivity that Axelar offers, right? With a single point of integration, you get a connection with Axelar, you get access to the wider ecosystem. And just to demonstrate why this is important, I want to talk about some of the work we've been doing with financial institutions and why they like this particular architecture. If you're a financial institution, you're launching your own chain, you want to have very granular control on what information passes between your chain and other ecosystems. But at the same time, you want to be able to access all of the big ecosystems, right? It's not uncommon that big institutions we're talking to want to be available on zk Sync, on Arbitrum, on Ethereum mainnet. And if they have to do it in a pairwise fashion, someone would have to set up relayer services that communicate directly between their chain and each individual chain, right? They would have to set up 10 permission connections. While with Axelar, you can set up one permission connection to the Axelar chain, have full, very granular control of what information passes back and forth, and then from that point on, the Axelar services can pass your information to other chains. But it's much, much cheaper, and it's much easier to integrate, right, from a developer effort standpoint. So this is really unique, and I believe only Axelar today has this capability. Now, finally, I want to talk about this new developer toolkit we have. For those of you that are familiar with Kubernetes, right, which is orchestration tooling in Web 2 for automated application development, deployment, we're building something similar for Web 3. So the problem this is solving is that if you're a developer today and you want to launch an application on many different blockchains, there's massive overhead to do that, right? Basically, take an application that, let's say, is fully ready to launch on a single chain. If you want to launch it on 10 chains, it's going to take you at least 6 more months to do. Why? Because you have to deploy the application on 10 different chains. It's different EVM. Even if it's EVM chains, it's different chain, has its own intricacies that you need to be familiar with. Then you have to maintain, upgrade when necessary the application. You have to do a lot of testing. It's a massive amount of overhead. So with this tooling that we're working on, developers will be able to build their application once, and will have a set of services that can deploy their applications on your behalf on every other chain in the ecosystem, and you'll also be able to maintain the application, upgrade it through the Axelar stack. So this is really going to lower the barrier of adoption and the barrier for innovation in the cross-chain space, and really enable people to build these cross-chain, simple user experiences that Web3 needs. Now, with that said, I want to talk a bit more about the user experience and what are some applications that people are building on top of the Axelar platform. Again, as we mentioned earlier, the user experience that we want to get at is one where people just think about assets and applications, right? We should never have to think about anything else, right? Your wallet should never show you which blockchain you are on. All that has to be abstracted away. The first application that's very popular of Axelar is the cross-chain version of a decentralized exchange called Squid. I mentioned it briefly on our panel earlier as well. It allows you to take any asset on any chain that's any of the 60 chains that we have and swap for any asset on the other side. From a user experience standpoint, the user only issues one transaction on the origin chain and pays gas once. And all of the other transactions you see on the slide are completely abstracted away on the back end. All right? So let's say you want to go from Matic to BNB. You would issue one transaction, and behind the scenes, what would happen is your Matic would be swapped to USDC. There would be another swap, bridge transaction. Then the USDC would be swapped to USDT because that's the biggest stablecoin on BNB chain. That would be swapped to BNB. So it would take like 5 different steps, but Squid abstracts all of that away, and the whole flow only takes something like 20 seconds because it uses intent-based ideas to accelerate the whole flow. Right? So this is basically the cross-chain version of something like Uniswap, if you want to think of it that way. Second example that's picking up subtraction, another native application built on top of Axelar is a cross-chain version of Aave or Compound. How can you collateralize an asset on Avalanche and get a loan on Phantom, where the whole logic of the application actually lives on Polkadot behind the scenes, right? So again, super simple user experience. A user only initiates one transaction on Avalanche, and everything else happens behind the scenes. It's a fully, to my knowledge, like the first fully chain-agnostic money market to exist. And finally, third use case I'd like to talk about is the use case of cross-chain governance. This is a use case that's been directly integrated by Uniswap. So on a bunch of non-layer 2 chains, right now, if you go and use Uniswap, they have some kind of upgrade process on the Ethereum mainnet, right? And maybe they want to upgrade the fees or some other parameter in the protocol. What happens is all the token holders of Uniswap will vote on Ethereum mainnet, and the result of the vote is going to be passed through Axelar messaging to the Uniswap instance on the layer 2, and on the layer 1, and they're going to execute this parameter upgrade or whatever this upgrade is, right? And this is great because all of the Uni token holders are on Ethereum mainnet, right? And we never have to ask them to move to another chain, vote. All of the voting happens on Ethereum mainnet itself. And as a final demonstration of the capabilities of the platform, I want to go back to this orchestration tooling I mentioned earlier. That's very similar to Kubernetes, and how this is already live for tokens. So I'm going to stream a quick video in a moment that demonstrates how you can launch a token across 10 chains in 2 minutes. And this is a no-code solution. Even if you're not a developer, that's trivial to do, right? You can go to this front end and just deploy a token. So let me just play it for you. It's about a minute. In this example, it takes an existing token that lives on Avalanche, goes to the front end, adds the number of chains. You pick the number of chains you want it deployed on. You initiate one transaction on the origin chain, in this case, Avalanche, from your MetaMask wallet. Then you just wait, and the token shortly will be deployed on all of the other chains, right? And in a moment, it's going to show how it's been deployed on some of the other explorers, like on Seoul or Phantom. And the nice thing here is that you also get a front end through which you can move the asset back and forth, right? So you're not just creating, not just deploying this cross-chain token, it's actually immediately transferable by your end users, right? So if you're a developer thinking about taking your token cross-chain, I think I recommend you try this out. It's super easy to use. And as the final part of the conversation, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the great applications that are built in the Axelar cross-chain ecosystem. Currently, Axelar is the leader in terms of being used by most of the big applications in the space. Lido, for example, is using Axelar for distributing stake teeth to the Cosmos ecosystem. We also have another collaboration where jointly with Wormhole, we're bridging stake teeth to the BNB chain. DYDX is using Axelar and Squid, this cross-chain DEX application, for onboarding. Ondo, which is one of the 2 biggest real-world asset issuers, is using Axelar's messaging for its native bridge, right? So you can move Ondo's assets from any chain to any other chain with zero slippage today, and it's using Axelar tech under the hood. And then we are also doing quite a bit of work with institutions like JP Morgan, Microsoft, and I think this is going to be very exciting because a lot of these players actually have a path to commercialization. So I think that's going to be a big narrative over the next 1-2 years and will bring a lot of adoption. And next, we're just breaking it down by verticals. Interoperability, what's great about it is that it touches every single vertical. Right? Interoperability is all about creating these novel, seamless user experiences. And if you look here, whether it's DeFi, wallets, gaming, real-world assets, many of the leaders have already integrated Axelar's product into their stack. And in addition to that, we have many other existing applications in the wider Web3 ecosystem that are building natively on Axelar and are doing interesting things. And again, this is really very widely encompassing because Axelar is not about bridging, right? And cross-chain interoperability is not about bridging. It's about enabling seamless user experience in a world fragmented across hundreds or thousands of chains, right? And that's why big players and small players and really startups, really everyone across different verticals are using the technology. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks again, Erica, for the great event. Thank you to the community for welcoming everyone. I know my team set up a Korean community channel. I think we should have had the main Axelar Telegram as well, but feel free to join here. If you're thinking about building cross-chain, you have questions, I'm always available on Twitter as well. My DMs are open. Happy to chat with any developers or anyone who wants to know more. Thank you so much.